Executive committee, stand up, please. All those from the executive committee, please.
Okay, we are ready. I'd like to call this meeting Tuesday, January 21st, 2020 to order of the full county board. At this time, the invocation will be by Member Metzger. Please rise.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today as we begin a new decade, asking for your guidance, wisdom, support as we begin this meeting. Let us take a moment to thank the Lord for this opportunity to be here, working together toward a common goal of enriching our county. Thank you for every seat that is filled here today, and for each mind and heart that fills the presence of this room. We thank you. Guide us, Lord, so that we may unite in a spirit of mutual respect and exchange of ideas and goals, not as individual entities, but as the county that we strive to be. In our discussions this evening, let us not forget for whom we do this. For you, the citizens of McLean County, its clients, visitors, staff, employees, elected officials, and friends. Help us work together to be successful in our obligation to our county as we seek your guidance and inspiration in all your thoughts and decisions, and continue to remind us that what we do today, what we accomplish, is in the pursuit of the greater good and glory to you and the service of humanity. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
County Clerk, please call the roll.
James Sollner. Gerald Thompson. Shana Wachinski. George Wendt. Lori Wolrab. Josh Barnett. Jacob Beard. Lindsay Bloomfield. William Casely. Sharon Chung. Chuck Erickson. William John Friedrich. George Gordon. Elizabeth Johnston. Absent. Randall Martin. Catherine Metzger. Carl Robustelli. Susan Schaefer. Logan Smith. John McIntyre.
Here, we have 19 members present, one absent. We do have a quorum. We'll move on the agenda next to, we have no members of the public that have applied to appear tonight. We'll go on to the consent agenda. It has it before you. I'd say, Member Casely.
I move to amend paragraph 7 of the agreement on page 95 by changing the word hearing to heating.
We're not going to amend it, but we'll just do a change. Scrivener's error, is it? Or the word is a heating, and it's
It should be heating rather than hearing.
yeah, heating. Okay. All right, staff, you got that? We'll make that amendment. Thank you, sir. Still have the agenda before you. Is there a motion to approve? Member Wolrab.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve, but I'd like to pull off 6E2C for separate consideration.
All right, 6E, 2C, CAC lease. Chairman Gordon, that will be yours. You have that, 6E2C. All right, anyone else? We have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the removal of 6E2C. Is there a second? Second by Member Barnett. Any other comments or questions? Discussion? If none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. This was not an amendment. It was just a motion to pull, so we're okay with that. There is an item D on page 6061, which is a transfer ordinance, which would requires a 2/3 vote. Is there anyone who needs to be put down as a dissenting vote for the transfer ordinance? Page 6061. If not, then we'll say that was passed unanimously, and we'll move on to, we have no resolutions or congratulations tonight, so we'll move on to the standing committee reports. Executive Committee first, Vice Chairman Solon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Executive Committee has 4 items to present this evening. One is 7A. 1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2020 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance, General Fund 0001, County Administration 0002, CIT grant. I so move.
Motion by Chairman Solner. Is there a second? Second by Member Schaefer. Comments or questions? This requires a 2/3 vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Are there any dissenting votes to be recorded? If not, it is unanimous.
Next item is 7A 1B, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2020 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance, General Fund 0001, County Administration 0002, and this is a CAT grant. I so move.
Motion by Vice Chairman Solner, second by Member Woolrab. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any dissenting votes to be recorded? There are none. Motion passes unanimously.
Next item is 7A 1C, request approval of a graduate practicum placement agreement with Illinois State University, and it's through the BHCC. I so move.
Motion by Vice Chairman Solner, second by Member Metzger. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
Lastly, 7A 1D, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2020 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance, General Fund 0001, County Board 0001, and this is for fleet, and I so move that.
Motion by Vice Chairman Solner. Is there a second? Second by Member Kaisley. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are there any dissenting votes? Motion carries unanimously.
Those are all the action items this evening. There are numerous reports in the packet, and our general report can be found in the unapproved minutes, and I would be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. We'll move on to the report of the Health Committee Chair, Member Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health Committee has no items for action today. Our general report can be found on pages 2 through 7 of the unapproved minutes packet, and I would answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Land Use and Development Committee, Chairman Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land Use and Development Committee brings 2 items for action. First item is item C1A. Approve the request of County Zoning Board of Appeals in case ZA-19-08. This is a text amendment of the zoning ordinance of the Code of McLean County, Chapter 350 Zoning, Paragraph 1, to amend Section 350-26, Article 3, definitions, to add definitions of cannabis craft grower, cannabis cultivation center, cannabis dispensary, cannabis infuser, cannabis processor, and cannabis transporter. 2, to amend Section 350-42, Article 6, use table, to allow the above cannabis businesses by special use in several zoning districts. And 3, to amend Section 350-43, Article 6, use standards, to add use standards for cannabis businesses, and I so move.
Thank you. Motion by Chairman Erickson and second by Member Robustelli. Comments or questions? Member Bloomfield wishes to abstain from voting on this issue. Let the record show that. Anyone else? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motions? I'm sorry?
Yes.
How many opposed? Can you please, let's take a show of hands. Okay. So we have 17 yes votes, 16 yes votes, 2 no votes. Chairman no vote. Okay. All right, thank you. Motion did carry. Member Erickson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second item is item C1B. Deny the request of Eric Pocarney in case ZA-19-07 on parcel 08-05-300-008. He is requesting a map amendment to change the zoning classification from A Agriculture District to M1 Restricted Manufacturing District on property in Money Creek Township at 25182 North 1925 East Road, Lexington, Illinois, and I so move.
Motion by Chairman Erickson, second by Member Robustelli. Comments or questions or discussion? Member Metzger?
This piece of property is in District 1, which is my district, and I'm very familiar with it, very familiar with attended the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, and truly believe that we have a good business plan, a very positive small business owner that could do some wonderful things in our county, and I believe we need to support that as much as we can. However, I cannot support changing this to an M1 district. Because not that he isn't a good business owner and he wouldn't be able to maintain that property the way it needs to be maintained. And his neighbors support him on this. But as his business grows, if he needs more property and he moves away from that, that piece of property remains M1, and then we have no control. So I am not going to vote for this. I hope that he can come up with another solution that will allow him an opportunity to use that property as he chooses to. But because we do need to support the kind of business that he is and the kind of businessman that he has proven himself to be.
Thank you. Other comments or discussion? Member Erickson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with Member Metzger. I support the idea, but I don't support the way he's going about doing it. I think a better process would be to resubmit this to the Zoning Board of Appeals as a text amendment for a special use on that particular piece of land. I do want to give Mr. Pocarni credit. I attended, I think I can say this, but I guess my lawyers will tell me up there I can't. I attended the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, and it was the same meeting that we had we had the cannabis amendment on there as well. And the room was full. And I thought people were there to speak on the cannabis amendment, but they were really there to speak on Mr. Pocarni's amendment. So there was a lot of support from his neighbors as to what he was trying to do. And, you know, it's one of those things that we as lawyers, we do everything right. We get all the witnesses, we present the case, and we still get denied. You know, so, you know, he did everything right. He did a good job presenting it to the Zoning Board of Appeals. But I think that this process of doing a full rezoning, I don't support it. I think it should come back as a special use text amendment, which, as I understand it, he can do if he's denied tonight. He can do that as soon as he chooses to do so. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. That's my understanding as well. Member Woolram?
I'm in support of the comments that my previous speakers have made here, but I also wanted to add that there's a business demand also for his services, and I think that needs to be recognized when this goes back, as I suppose it will, to the ZBA. Finally, it's interesting that in the information from the ZBA, it talks about there not being a development trend along in this direction, but I think it's really hard to get a trend of development when we don't allow any development. So I certainly hope that the ZBA will find a way to help him get his business established in a place where people are asking for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Member Casely?
I think that the Zoning Board of Appeals itself really wanted to do something about this, but they were not able to do so within the framework of the petition that was presented to them. And it's my understanding that Mr. Pocarni has hired an attorney and that they are working on another solution to this problem. And therefore, I would like to move to table this and let them see what they can come up with. So I move to table it.
We're talking about the ruling on the manufacturing part of the zoning, member Kay. You understand? Okay. Anyone else? There is a motion to table. Is there a second? Second by member Wolrab. Any discussion on the motion to table? There is no discussion allowed on a motion to table. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Anyone? It is not debatable, so we'll have to take a vote on this. The motion is to table this motion, which is motion C1B, as a result of denial by the ZBA on the case. Everybody understand? I'm going to take a voice vote on this and see how we go with it. So all in favor of the motion to table, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm going to have a roll call vote. Too close to call. I will vote on this. Chairman will
Mr.
vote.
Chairman? Could we get some clarification on what this would actually do to the process? And from a time frame standpoint?
Well,
I realize there's no discussion, but if there's a possible way we could get some clarification on
the
what
clarification would be, once this motion is tabled, that we will not deal with it again unless it comes back to us, unless you want to make a motion till a date certain, which would be the next meeting. Right now, it's just a motion to put it on the table and not deal with it, is my interpretation of procedure. Member Gordon.
Mr. Chairman, can I bring the state's attorney's office in on this one? It seemed, my understanding of a motion to table is that the only time it can be brought off the table is the next regularly scheduled meeting of the body. It could be brought off the table
My
next time,
interpretation
even
was it
without
would
date
have to
certain.
be a date certain, which we would say that could be the next meeting, or it could be brought off either way. Right. I'm agreeing with you, and I'm agreeing not to agree with you on it, if you know what I mean. As far as the parliamentary procedure interpretation on it, right? Do we have state's attorney's interpretation on that?
It's my understanding in Robert's rules, and it's been a while since I've read them, there's two different motions. A motion to table indefinitely that just comes off the table when somebody moves it to come off the table, and then a motion to table to a time certain, which would then come off the table at that time certain. In this case, I will say, and Jessica, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe statutorily on a map amendment or a text amendment, you've got to vote within 60 days of the close of the public hearing. So next meeting is fine, is still within that 60 days, but it shouldn't be tabled. I'd caution against tabling it longer than that.
Not a comment, Mr. Chairman, just a question. If we table it, then he can still decide what he wants to do from here. I mean, he could still decide to present it back to ZBA as a,
No action would be taken, so he could
So
still
he
follow
could.
the course of action that the applicant and his attorney chose
Could-
to do that and reapply
okay.
for special use. That's my
Yeah,
understanding.
nothing would prevent him.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my interpretation as well. Are we okay on that, Mr. Gordon? Okay. All right, so I'll have a roll call vote now. This is a motion to table. A yes vote supports the motion to table this to a date not certain, but within 60 days. Of the, no, 60 days of tonight. Wouldn't it be?
No.
Of the hearing, all right. Get your calendar out, we can figure this one out. Okay, clerk, take the roll. Chairman will vote. A yes vote supports the motion to table.
James Solner. Carol Thompson. Shana Wachinsky. George Wendt. Lori Walrab. Josh Barnett. Jacob Beard. Lindsay Bloomfield. William Casely.
Yes.
Sharon Chung. No. Chuck Erickson. Yes. William John Friedrich. Yes. George Gordon.
No.
Randall Martin.
No.
Catherine Metzger. No. Carla Robustelli. Susan Schaefer. No. Logan Smith. Yes. John McIntyre.
No. So 11, you have 11. 12 no votes and 7 yes votes. The motion is denied. We'll go back to the original motion on the floor. Member Thompson?
I would just say in the effort of trying to get this gentleman's business on the road, I know there's concerns that with this the zoning change, it could have longer-term ramifications, but we also have a gentleman who has put forth a good plan, people wanting his business to go forth, and something here we could do tonight to help expedite his position, I think would be positive, and so I guess I would be in favor of voting against the denial. Understanding, of course, that it does present challenges, but I think those challenges could be helped if we could, or could be overcome by helping this gentleman get moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Member Gordon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm interested in knowing, the suggestion has been made that there may be a text amendment that would lead to a special use permit. I'd like to ask if there is any minimum time required between an action we take tonight if we go with the recommendation to deny. Is there any minimum time between now and when a special use permit could be applied for? Because I gather from a conversation I had with Mr. Picarni that there are some time considerations, and there always would be. But I'm wondering if there is some minimum time that would disadvantage him, or if there is simply the time that it would take him and his attorney to get those wheels turning.
Well, I'll call for a staff interpretation, and if the state's attorney does want to have Mr. Dick come to the podium, we can do that as well.
So I think the publication date to hold a hearing in February is already come and gone. We've already published for those, and Phil can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's right. So if he would walk in tomorrow and file for a text amendment for a special use, the text amendment hearing would go in March and theoretically come before you in March. I suspect he would then have to wait to see if that passed or failed to file for the special use, which then would come before you in April, right? He could file, the ZBA hearing, he could file a permit, or so he could get his publication in the middle of March. I suspect that's the earliest. Could staff work and try and get this done quicker? We could. I mean, but generally, just given the regular ZBA schedule, that would fall under the regular ZBA schedule.
But there's no legal minimum time that has to go by before those wheels can start turning. That's what I'm really trying to get at.
I think you're talking about a year that doesn't apply in this situation.
Because,
the only legal time would be the 15, I think we've got to give 15 days public notice in the publication. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that clarifies it for me. Okay, anyone else? Member Solner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, attended the ZBA hearing. I thought they did a great job of discussing it. I know that they were really torn. I believe they also would like to see the business thrive and grow up in that area. I think that their concern also was the fact that once the zoning is changed, then it stays with that property no matter what happens. So I believe a special use permit's the answer. I hope that can happen. I agree with Mr. Thompson, though. I do think it's something that's really needed in that area. But I'm going to actually support upholding the denial with the hopes that Mr. Picarni goes ahead with the special use permit process. Thank you.
Anyone else? Member Beard?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we have, it sounds like two paths in front of us. It also sounds like everyone has spoken in favor of this business existing at this location in buildings that are largely resemble the buildings that are there now. The photos presented at the ZBA hearing, the surrounding area this business would not be out of place with some of the Mason buildings and the farm buildings that are within eyesight, including the one township building, which it would be smaller than. So on one hand, we can go forward and overturn the denial, approving, which would end this process and allow him to move forward. But that does raise the possibility that further on down the line, if the business moves, there are other M1 manufacturing businesses that could exist on this property that the neighbors might not like, that some of the next door neighbors would not be supportive of. And if those went in now, that could be different. The other path, as he pointed out, is if we don't have enough votes to overturn the denial, would be to go through the special use process, which is making a businessman jump through a number of hoops. If we do end up going in that direction, I would ask that we consider waiving the additional fees. It was, I think, $525 that he paid for to apply for this. So if we do deny that, I would like the land use committee to look at that and not make a local business individual pay that twice. So those are the two paths. It's difficult to think about the idea of making someone go through a multi-month process when they've already put in all this paperwork, they've worked with their neighbors, but I certainly understand the considerations of future use and creating a spot zoning situation, which we may not in general want. Those are the two approaches as I see it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, and we'll take that into consideration. It's in the minutes for land use at the time, if that comes to them at the time. Anybody else? Member Rostelli.
Mr. Chairman, this question is more just procedural. I want to make sure from my experiences. My understanding is when we get a finding from the Zoning Board of Appeals that we are limited to the facts of the public hearing that were presented in the case. So we're making a decision based on the information that was presented in the case, that was presented in this document. So I want to be on the record to say that based on the information that I've reviewed, I support the denial of this because I don't think it's an appropriate use, and other considerations outside of that are not factoring into my decision.
I think that's a very good point to make. Is there any other kind of discussion that does not support any decision either way? If not, then I will call the question on this. A yes vote is to support the resolution as stated in your book to deny the application and support the zoning board ruling. Is that understood? I'll take a voice vote and see where we go with it. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. I believe the motion's carried, but I'll take a roll call vote just so we have for record.
So an aye denies the application.
A yes vote supports the resolution to deny the request.
James Seltner. Yes. Gerald Thompson. No. Shana Wachinski. Yes. George Wendt.
No.
Lori Wolreb. Yes. Josh Barnett.
Yes.
Jacob Beard.
No.
Lindsay Bloomfield. Yes. William Casely.
Reluctantly, yes.
Sharon Chung. Yes. Chuck Erickson. Yes. William John Friedrich.
Yes.
George Gordon.
Yes.
Randall Martin.
Yes.
Catherine Metzger.
Yes.
Carla Robustelli.
Yes.
Susan Schaefer. Yes. Logan Smith. You voting, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So yes.
Yes, I'm voting yes. We have
3, no.
16 yes, 3 no. Motion carries. And Mr. Erickson, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land Use and Development has no other items for action. We have a general report, but I don't want to have where the pages are, but you can find it yourself.
All right, thank you. Move on to the report of the Transportation Committee. Chairman Casely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one item to bring to the board tonight, and that is a request from the Village of Stanford for an intergovernmental agreement for an ordinance prohibiting excessive engine braking noise on a highway that is Division Street in the village of Stanford. It runs from Route 122 south to the school road, and I move that.
Motion by Chairman Kaisley, second by Member Martin. Comments or questions or discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Our general report is found in our unapproved minutes of our January 7th meeting.
Thank you. Move on to the report of the Property Committee Chairman Barnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property Committee brings forward one item for action to the board this evening. Item E, 1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2019 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance, General Fund 0001, Facilities Maintenance 0041, 0050.0450.0009, comma, 0050-0621.0001, comma, and 0050-0833.0002. Thank you. It's on page 219 of the packet. It's for equipment and furnishings for the remodeled area of the Law and Justice Center, and I so move.
That's what we got. Thank you. There's a motion by Member Barnett. Is there a second by Member Robustelli? Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This is a 2/3 vote requirement. Any dissenting votes to be recorded? If none, we'll consider the motion approved unanimously.
Okay. Property Committee brings no other items to act for action, and our general report may be found in the unapproved minutes packet.
Thank you. We'll move on to the Justice Committee report. Chairman Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Justice Committee came into this meeting with one item for action, and we now have two because of an item pulled from the consent agenda. Item F1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2020 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance, Children's Advocacy Center, found on pages 221 and 222, and I move that.
Motion by Chairman Gordon, second by Member Chung. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. This
Thank you.
is a 2/3 vote as well, isn't it?
Sorry,
Yes,
sir.
it is. Any dissenting votes? Sorry, sir. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move on.
Thank you.
We're going to refer back to page 2, item 2E2C for everyone.
Item 6E2C, originally presented on the consent agenda, request approval of a lease agreement for the Children's Advocacy Center on the second floor of the Hope Pregnancy Center building at 202 North Main Street, Pontiac, Illinois, pages 92 through 95 in our packet, and I will move that.
Motion by Chairman Gordon. Is there a second? Second by Member Schaefer. Comments or questions? Member Woolrath.
I want to vote no, just to express my disapproval for renting from this particular landlord.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Discussion? All in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. How many recorded votes do we have? Member Chung, Member Woolrath, Member Wachinski are the same votes. Thank you. Motion does carry. We'll move on, sir.
Our general report can be found in the unapproved minutes, pages 12 through 16, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Finance Committee, Chairman Solner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance has one item this evening, G1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2020 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for Animal Control Department 0032. This is to replace some radios. I so move.
Motion by Chairman Solner, second by Member Friedrich. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any dissenting votes? Motion carries unanimously.
Our general report can be found in the unapproved minutes. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the County Administrator, Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chairman. We do not have any items to present for action, and we have nothing in general to report.
Thank you. We'll move on to other business and communication. Member Wolrab has requested an item placed on the agenda for a resolution. I'll give you the floor. Item 8A.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we approve to submit the questions of law to the state's attorney office regarding polling places as found in your packet on page 224.
There's a motion to approve as found as the back page of your packet. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Smith. Comments or questions? Member Solner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was actually discussed at Finance, I believe, last month, and was defeated. I respect Member Wolrab's right to bring this back and her to discuss it, but because it was defeated in Finance, I'm going to oppose this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Member Beard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted in favor of this at the stand-up. Subsequent to that, we received a communication from the clerk's office with state statutes regarding the specific questions in there. So I looked over it again. I feel like I have all the statutes that are applicable and that guide how this issue is handled. So at this point in time, I'm going to plan to vote no. It appears that the questions have been answered. If at a future point in time we want to propose changes, I would be willing to do that as they come up. But in terms of the research needed and looking at how polling places are decided and the state rules around that, I feel like I now have that information.
All right, thank you. Other comments?
I agree with
Member
Jacob.
Went?
It's settled law. We don't need to waste the state's attorney's time reviewing.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Member Wolrab?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm requesting this legal review so that we can have this information available to us in a timely fashion the next time a request to change a polling location comes before us. What I'm asking for in answer to Mr. Beard's statement is really a more complete review, a legal review, to look at whatever, if there are court cases, if there may have been other relevant information. Sometimes there's a legislative history, anything that would give us a more complete picture. Everybody in here, I'm sure, has read statutes, may have looked at those statutes, but that, as you probably know, the statute in and of itself doesn't give you the full picture of where you stand legally on any particular question. So that is why I've asked the staff, I've brought this back and asked legal staff to please fill in whatever gaps there might be, and perhaps there aren't very many gaps, but I'd ask them to take a look at that so the next time we get a question like this, and we have gotten several of them over the years, and they may come, and most likely will come back to us, that we're not between a rock and a hard place waiting for there to be an answer to come back from our legal staff, who after all has quite a lot on their plate and may not have the time to research this when we need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Member Robustelli?
I'm going to support Member Wolrab's request, as I did during our committee when we had a divided vote. And I want to share why. I mean, to me, we have Member Wendt, who's laughing while I'm talking, who says it's a waste of time. Well, I mean, we have a state's attorney's office for the purpose of answering legal questions when policymakers need them answered. And we have a policymaker. You may not, some of us are less enlightened than Member Wendt on these issues. And so Member Wolrab needs to have some questions answered. She feels that's really important for her as she looks down the road, and there may be polling consolidations and those kinds of things. She's also done it in an unbelievably respectful and professional way. She provided a written statement of her questions. She presented them to the committee. She did everything exactly the way it was supposed to be done. And at the time, the state's attorney representative that was there said it would be no problem. So the only problem with her request are the individuals who think there's a problem with it. There is no problem with this request. There wasn't a problem presented by the state's attorney. And so I just don't understand, I don't understand the harm that would be done by putting these questions forward and getting responses from them. Then another objection was, well, the clerk has already answered all those questions. Well, clearly, for Member Walrab, that's not true. I respect her for that. That's her prerogative. She wants to make sure she has a thorough review. And nothing would stop the state's attorney's office from working with the clerk's office to get the answers to these questions. So if it's true that most of this has been written up or put into some form of a document, great. The state's attorney's office could collect that information, look through it, and make sure that Member Walrab has all the answers to all the questions she needs to be able to make policy decisions. So I plan on supporting it for that reason. We haven't, as far as I can tell, ever denied a request from a member for an opinion from the state's attorney's office, at least for the time that I've been on the board. And I just think it's really sad that we are setting a precedent like this where somebody can't get questions answered on basic questions that they submit in the way that they're supposed to submit them so that they can make good decisions that will have some public policy related impact. So I hope that the majority will support her request so that she has the information she needs.
Thank you. Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've read a statute or two during my time on the board and before my time on the board, and I very much agree with what Member Walrab pointed out. Statutory language can be somewhat less than comprehensive. It can seem comprehensive, but there may be gaps that need to be filled in. To me, that's the major advantage of asking the state's attorney's office to provide advisory opinions about it in response to these questions. Because statutory language, while seeming to cover the territory, very frequently doesn't. And if the state's attorney's office can fill in some meaningful gaps, that I think is worth doing.
Thank you. Are there other comments? Member Kaisley.
I believe that our rules provide that if a committee member wants to have a legal opinion and the chairman of the committee concurs, that the chairman of the committee has the authority to ask the state's attorney's office for an opinion. And I think that maybe this request should be made to the chairman of the committee first and see if that doesn't produce results.
Was taken already out of committee, so I think there's been action taken on that. The rules interpretation would be subject to interpretation on that, as far as I know, on the rules. That's the Rules Committee people. I don't remember that one at the time. Would have to look that up. Member Schaefer?
I'm not on finance, and so I was not at the meeting. However, I thought that I read in the minutes that the information that the county clerk had provided to the committee on the statutes and whatnot had also been worked on with this Ms. Woods to provide that information to the committee. So I believe that there's some state's attorney work in there already. That's just what I read.
Do you want a clarification on that? Was that in fact?
That is correct. There was some work done by me in conjunction with Ms. Michael in answering those questions in a preliminary draft.
All right, thank you. Other comments? Wait just a second, we'll get to your round again here. Anyone else? If not, Member Woolrap.
Thank you. I would ask for further clarification and I'd like to say that if the work has been done on a preliminary draft, there would seem little harm in completing the work, which is my understanding that there might still be a little bit of work left to do to flesh it out fully. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll call the question. I'm sorry.
Can we get clarification from the state's attorney?
I thought that was part of your support for the motion. My error. Thank you.
If this were to pass, there is additional research that I would do. I think the bulk of my answer was provided with the preliminary draft with Ms. Michael as far as the statutes, but I won't say that there isn't more that I could do to more fully answer those questions.
Anyone else? Member Beard.
Thank you, and I'm commenting on this as having been in the Finance Committee and looked at this over the last couple of months. I don't think there's anything preventing, Member Wolrab from communicating with the state's attorney's office, especially around if there's a desire to create new statutes or create new rules within the county. And I do think it was a sincere request, and again, I voted in favor of it in December. But the reason I think we're voting on this now, and I haven't been here very long, but previously, the state's attorney's office was being at times bombarded or being given a lot of requests to opine on things in a way that was really difficult for their time and their normal work. So within the last few years, we've created this process. I think the last 2 years is when we put this in, where we started to require votes. So one person, so I couldn't go and send them 20 questions about this or that or whatever I'm interested in. So I think, and Member Erickson stated in our finance committee that he has previously had issues that were rejected by previous state's attorney's office, requests for research. So I think we know that in the past, there have been instances where we've had legal questions that were not answered. So I think this is only the second time that we've actually gone to requesting a written legal researched opinion on things, with the first time being a question around the auditor, which was a very germane accounting practices. That was something that was very timely and needed to be discovered, whereas this is more of feels like more of a research project, which I'm not saying it's not valuable, but with the information that we've already been given, I think we've already got what we're looking for, at least what I was looking for in your questions. And next steps would be perhaps to say, if there's things that need to be changed, I can perhaps work with administration or with the attorney's office on those particular items versus what this request is.
Other comments? Anyone? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote.
James Holner. No. Gerald Thompson. Shannon Wachensky. George Wendt. No. Lori Wolrab. Yes. Josh Barnett. No. Jacob Beard. No. Lindsay Bloomfield. No. William Casely. No. Sharon Chung. Yes. Chuck Erickson. No. William John Friedrich. No. George Gordon. Yes. Randall Martin. No. Catherine Metzger. Carla Robustelli. Yes. Susan Schaefer. No. Logan Smith. Yes.
7 yes.
I have 6 yes.
All right, the vote is 12 no, 6 yes. The motion fails. Any other things we have on that part of the agenda for other business? I have some other business. The Rules Subcommittee will be meeting at 3:30 on February 13th. I want to invite all members of this county board to submit any suggestions or recommendations to any of our Rules Subcommittee members or to our administrative staff. Same with review from our state's attorney's office and our staff to submit for us. Anyone is welcome to attend the Rules Subcommittee meeting. The Rules Subcommittee will be first on the discussion. Then we may entertain any other suggestions or support if someone did submit any suggestions to us at that time. That's up to the chairman of the Rules Subcommittee. Okay. The other thing I have is there is a rule that all county board members, if you are not going to be able to make a committee meeting, please call in and follow the rule and let our administrative staff, our office know, or myself, or our members of our office staff or committee, or administrative staff, so that we can be sure that we have a quorum. The rule says if we are not getting a quorum, that either the vice chairman of the board or the chairman of the board will attend as a voting member in the place of the people that are vacant so that we can continue to conduct business on a monthly basis. Member Erickson, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, the protocol was always that if you couldn't make the meeting, call the chairman of your committee and call Camille, or not Camille, the county administrator, who is Camille, I guess. But call somebody and let both sides know. So your chairman of your committee knew and the county administrator knew. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for reminding us of that. I know I'd brought that up at the executive committee meeting.
Thank you for your
And I
clarification.
appreciate that.
I think we just need to reiterate the fact that we do need to, and call your attention to that. I'm sure everybody will cooperate. We want to continue business as usual. Anyone else have anything for business, new business? Member Beard, are you just pointing or you got your hand up? You're having your own discussion. All right, thank you. We'll go on. We have approval of bills. The bills have been submitted, reviewed by our auditor and approved in the amount of $3,483,693.62. Is there a motion to approve the bills? Motion by Member Friedrich, second by Member Schaefer. Comments or questions? All in favor of approving the bills as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion has carried. I have nothing further for tonight's meeting, so this meeting is adjourned.